Let's talk about the New South. Okay. We're talking about the South after the Civil War and after Reconstruction. Okay. Let's get into it. Unfortunately, you're going to have some remnants of the old South in the New South. All right. Let's get into it. Before we do, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I am your homeboy first. And this is the realest, most entertaining show in the game. Put it on something. Again, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that share button, put all your people on it. Also, turn on those post notifications so you don't miss anything from me here at IG Entertainment. You feel me? But look, first of all, y'all know in the past, after our chapter on industrialization, I gave y'all a quiz. I am not gonna give y'all a quiz this time after the chapter on immigration. We're gonna change it up here, okay? This is not my classroom, okay? So I ain't gotta treat y'all the same way I treated the students and give y'all a quiz or an assessment or anything like that. You feel me? We're just gonna keep it moving because I want to get y'all this knowledge. I want to give y'all as much as possible, as quickly as possible, to matter because obviously our world needs it. You feel me? But we about to get into in this chapter for the next a few weeks. We're talking about the transformation of the South and the transformation of the West during the late 1800s. Okay, so we're gonna start with the South, where I'm from. You feel me? So let's not waste no time. Let's go ahead and get straight into it. All right, our objectives for this lesson, we're going to explain how the Southern economy changed in the late 1800s. We're going to analyze how Southern farmers consolidated their political power, and we're going to describe the experience of African Americans in the changing South. All right, some of our key terms and people that we're going to deal with: cash crop, crops such as cotton and tobacco that is grown not for its own use, but to be sold for cash. Farmers Alliance, a network of farmers organizations that work for political and economic reforms in the late 1800s. Civil Rights Act of 1875, law that banned discrimination in public facilities and transportation. Now, some of y'all may be thinking, hold on now. Civil Rights Act of 1875, they passed a Civil Rights Act back then? Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And obviously, your common sense gonna tell you that motherfucker didn't do shit because we had to come back and get a few more Civil Rights Act later on until we finally get the one with some teeth, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We got a long way to go before we get there. Okay. But you see, there was a Civil Rights Act passed in 1875. All right. Overarching question for this section is: how did the Southern economy and society change after the Civil War? Okay. In the post war years, railroads crisscrossed the South and industries grew. Yet, challenges remained for the South's economy and for its people. All right, let's get into it, y'all. All right, in the years following the Civil War, Southern leaders hoped to build a quote unquote new South. They worked to modernize the economy by one, supporting industries, and two, by diversifying agriculture. The South was behind the North in terms of industrialization. Okay, of course, the South depended on agriculture. The South depended on the enslavement of human beings, to do the bulk of the work down here on these large plantations and shit. Um, while they were relying on that, the North was becoming industrialized. You feel me? And of course, the South had the climate for agriculture, while the North didn't. So that played a role in the different kinds of economies that the North and the South had as well. But so with that more industrialization in the North, you had more railroads up north. You got more telegraph lines in the North. Uh, had more people in the North. Like we talked about with immigration, motherfuckers gonna move to where the jobs are. You feel me? So, uh, but after the Civil War, the South did start to modernize. It didn't catch up. And some people argue we still haven't caught up. But you did see the South start to support industry a little more and diversify agriculture some. All right, let's keep moving. Textile factories and lumber mills sprang up, So did iron, coal, and steel processing plants. Now, I used to like showing this picture in my class for a reason. I used to like showing this picture in my class, because I told y'all previously about continuity and change. Continuity and change. When you're looking at something from the past, I want you to think about, hey, what has continued from the past about what I'm seeing, and knowing what has changed. And if you take a real good look at this picture, you feel me, and you compare what you're seeing in this picture from the late 1800s to what you might see in a picture from the 1840s, let's say. Well, what has continued? Well, you can see that who they're front and center, who look like they the boss. It's the white man. Okay, and you got the black brothers back there as the labor. You feel me? Now, what has changed? They're technically free. Okay, they're free. I say technically because many will argue that they left slavery and then there was wage slavery where you getting paid, sure enough, but your ass ain't getting paid a living wage. You barely getting paid enough to goddamn survive. You feel me? And you still ain't got no fucking rights. So you just a step above slavery. Slavery, you just basically a slave and everything but name. You feel me? But technically, they were free. So that's what had changed. So you see how some of the remnants of the old South was still there in the new South. You feel me? Even in these new industries and shit that was popping up. Let's go. All right. Railroad construction boomed. New rail lines connected urban hubs with rural areas, cities with towns. Railroads move people and products, cities grew. So we already talked about this type of shit previously, but when we talked about it previously, it was happening in the north. Okay. Now you're going to see some of this start to happen down south. Yet economic expansion in the south lagged behind the rest of the country. War damage was extensive. The south lacked a well trained labor force and wages were low. A lack of capital led to a dependence on northern bankers. Okay, so all of these things, y'all, are things that hurt the South and still play a role. And while the South, if you look at a lot of economic indicators, you'll see that a lot of southern states still lag behind northern and western counterparts. Don't just think about Florida and don't just think about Texas. Okay, it's a lot of these states down here in the South, like Mississippi. Everybody just want to focus on Mississippi, goddamn, but Louisiana be fucking struggling, Alabama be fucking struggling, Arkansas be fucking struggling. You feel me? There's a lot of shit that go down here in this South. You feel me? And a lot of that shit still goes back to shit that happened fucking century ago, over a century ago. You feel me? And that first part, the war damage was extensive. Most of the Civil War happened in the South. You know what I'm saying? So that period of reconstruction, where you're trying to metaphorically put the country back together, you also had to try to literally put the country, fix the country because of the war damage here. Also, that part about the South lacking a well-trained labor force. You feel me? Uh, that's a jarring statement as well, especially when we get to talking about the differences in opinions about education. Okay. Uh, and yet, and still today, the South still lags behind some of our northern and western counterparts when it comes to educating our citizens. That leads to a lack of a well-trained labor force. Wages are still lower here than other places in the country. You know what I'm saying? The shit we going through today, this shit been going on a long time. All right, life was especially difficult for Southern farmers. Despite efforts to diversify, most farmers still depended on cash crops. The price of cotton, their main crop, plummeted after the war. Okay, y'all can see right there on that line graph. So this is gonna be for quite some time in our studies, y'all. Y'all gonna see me talk about Farmers fucking struggling. Struggles of the farmers. Struggle of the farmers. Okay. It's gonna be like that for a while, pretty much until we get to Franklin Roosevelt and when he started to put in some of his New Deal shit to try to help farmers. All right. Let's go. All right. Along with falling prices, cotton farmers face another disaster. Boll weevils wiped out entire crops. For many farmers, it was a struggle just to survive. Okay. So you see in this bar graph right here, it says per capita income in the South, 1860 and 1880. Now, of course, what's the difference? What's the drastic difference between these numbers? Well, the 1860 number is pre-Civil War, 1880 is post. Okay. So when you build a whole fucking economy off the backs of enslaved people, and then that system ends, yeah, your economy gonna be fucked up. Especially if you have a war mixed in between this shit. We still feel the effects of this shit. All right, faced with serious problems, farmers joined together to form the Farmers Alliance. And the Farmers Alliance worked to negotiate better prices on supplies, freight charges, and loan rates. And it connected farmers in the South and West. Now, in my reading and watching documentaries and shit like that, one of the most fucked up things that I came across is how white politicians would try to keep black farmers and white farmers separate. Try to stop them from uniting because they were facing, from an economic standpoint, many of the same things. Now, of course, the black farmers also had to deal with racial discrimination. You know what I'm talking about? But in terms of needing to get better prices for your supplies, a black and white farmer need that. Better freight charges, you all need that. You know what I'm talking about? But them white politicians didn't want to see that unity. They wanted to keep these people divided. You still see that today. Well, the wealthy try to keep working class people divided so they can hoard all the motherfucking wealth. Let's go. Black Southerners made important political and economic advances in the post-war years. Most important, they gained the right to vote and access to education. Now, that right to vote was for men only. Okay, so you got the 13th Amendment, which ended slavery. Emancipation Proclamation is not what really ended slavery. Don't let nobody say you that bullshit. Okay, because it did not end slavery. It only ended slavery in the rebelling states. Okay, so those states that were part of the Union that had motherfuckers enslaved, it didn't end slavery there. You feel me? So it was the 13th Amendment that finally eradicated slavery. And if you read the 13th Amendment closely, you'll see it doesn't eradicate slavery in prison. Read it carefully. Okay. It was the 14th Amendment that guarantees citizenship to those newly freed men and women. 14th Amendment gonna be something y'all hearing a lot about coming up here during this Trump administration. Just remember your homeboy first told you that. All right, because within that 14th Amendment, you got basically the idea of birthright citizenship. If you born here, goddamn it, you an American. And Trump said he want to do something about that. So we shall see. All right. But then it was the 15th Amendment that guaranteed the right to vote for black men. Okay. That you couldn't use race as a barrier to voting anymore. Okay. But they ain't say shit about gender. All right. But of course, we know that shit gonna be denied. We'll get into that momentarily. Also, access to education. I like this picture right here because it kind of recreates a typical black schoolhouse at the time, and this would be the typical black schoolhouse for quite some time. Our wonderful civil rights museum here in the state of Mississippi in Jackson. They have an exhibit in there. That goddamn it, that shit really it'll fuck you up. Y'all need to go spend some time with it. Okay. They got like a room and they split it down the middle. And on one side of the room is what a typical black school was like. Uh Probably like late 1800s, early 1900s type of shit. Um, and then on the other side, they show you like what a typical white school was like. And it's man, it fucks you up. It really does. You're not having an individual desk, uh, not having heat, not having supplies. And then you can see on the other side, they got every fucking thing. And then they, give you all the information about, you know, the teacher to student ratio and how, man, it was all out of whack for the black schools. It just fucks you up. It really fucks you up. I took my family in there, man. My daughter started crying, man. She really did. It was too much for her. So if you do take your youngest, man, just be prepared, to love on them. It's tough, but they need that shit. They really do. Really do. But we did get access to education. It wasn't the best, despite what idiots like Charleston White be talking about. Like, oh, we were more educated than everybody back then. Bullshit. These motherfuckers were systematically discriminating against us at this time. No, 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 no. Our education is not what it needs to be today. Okay, there's an educational crisis today. That's part of the reason I'm doing this shit. Okay, but it is better than it was at this time. We got to keep pushing it forward. All right, but let's talk about some of the bullshit they were doing to trying to stop our progression. You feel me? In time, however, many of the gains were reversed. Groups such as the Ku Klux Klan terrorized African Americans. Newfound freedoms were stripped away. Segregation was enforced. Okay, so these racist pieces of shit, this terrorist organization was formed to quote unquote put us back in our places. See, these motherfuckers couldn't stand some of the shit that they saw during Reconstruction. They couldn't stand to see motherfuckers like Blanche K. Bruce and Hiram Revels and J.R. Lynch. These are just some that pop into my head. They couldn't stand to see these black men win elections, go to Congress and shit. They couldn't stand to see that. Couldn't stand that. Black man voting. Mm. And you gotta remember that place like Mississippi, where I'm from, was majority black once upon a time. Because they had brought so many enslaved Africans to this motherfucker. You feel me? So they thought shit, this is a threat to our way of life. And so they formed this fucking terrorist organization that still to this day is allowed to operate in America. Like it's just some fucking social club or something. It's a terrorist network, dog. It's well documented what they've done. So once Reconstruction ended in with the compromise of 1876, with long story short, you had one of these tight ass elections. Tight, tight. You know what I'm saying? Matter of fact, goddamn it, I'll show y'all the electoral college map. You know, I'll do that for y'all. Do some nerdy shit because I have all the electoral college maps up until like 2020. I haven't saved 2024 yet. I know that's some nerdy shit, y'all, but I like shit like that. All right, so let's look at the electoral college map from 1876. So you see that this whole electoral college versus your popular vote had the country in a fucked up situation because the Democrat Tilden had won the popular vote with 51% of the vote, but the Republican Rutherford B. Hayes, had one more electoral college vote. You know what I'm talking about? 185 to 184. You know what I'm talking about? So this threw all the shit into crisis mode. But so they came up with a compromise, which was okay, Republican, we're gonna let you have the White House. You go ahead and get that, but you gotta agree to remove the remaining troops from the South. Okay, because basically the Union or the Northerners, you know what I'm talking about, had put the South under like a military occupation after the Civil War. You feel me? So that's why black men finally were able to, exercise the franchise. It wasn't just that you had the 15th Amendment and then okay, or Southern whites just let them go, be free and do their thing. No, 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 no. You had the motherfucking troops down here in this bitch that was protecting shit. You also had the Freedmen's Bureau and shit, you know what I'm talking about? So you have stuff in place, you know what I'm talking about? And the Freedmen Bureau, I'm sorry, was some put in place to help the newly freed men and women. Okay. With education, um, you know, political shit, shelter, all that kind of stuff. Basically just trying to help the newly freed people adjust to their freedom. All right. What do you white folk down south? The racist white folk down south were not having that shit, dog. They couldn't wait to get them damn troops, all of them, the fuck out of the South, so they can reclaim the South for the white man. That's what they wanted. That's what they wanted. Okay, so this was their chance to get it. You know what I'm talking about by saying, "Hey, you can have the White House, dog, but the rest of these troops, you got to get them the fuck on." And that shit allowed these bastards to run wild. It really did. And as you see, their segregation was enforced through terror. But once them troops were gone and them Southern white folks could really minimize our vote and shit like that through intimidation, all that kind of stuff, they went in there and rewrote these goddamn laws, Jake, from a state perspective. They were like, fuck what the hell the federal government got going. We gonna do what the fuck we want to do. All right. But let's look and see how the federal government responded. All right, the Civil Rights Act of 1875 banned discrimination in public facilities and transportation. All right, so that make it sound like okay, federal government, let's go. You got something done, okay. But then look at it. The Supreme Court, however, ruled in a series of cases decided in 1883 that such decisions were local issues. And what the fuck you think they gonna do? Southern towns and cities use the ruling to further limit the rights of African Americans. Tell you, that's why these motherfuckers hate the federal government. They don't want the federal government telling them shit, so they can goddamn do what the fuck they want to do from a discriminatory standpoint. And it's scary that we got a motherfucker coming back in who's appointing who's going to appoint judges who think that same kind of shit. Send it back to the states. Send it back to the states. But goddamn, what if I live in a state that ain't got his shit together? Same bullshit, y'all. Same bullshit. But that's it for today. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Okay. Let's look back real quick at these key terms and people, not many. For this one, I did throw out some other shit in there for y'all, some extras. You know what I'm talking about? Look up Blanche K. Bruce, look up Hiram Revels, look up J.R. Lynch. If you're from Jackson, you've been on Lynch Street countless time. If you fuck with Jackson State, you've been on Lynch Street countless time. Look up that brother. You know what I'm talking about? And you'll see why his presence in the United States Congress probably led to the deaths of some people, man. Like the old brothers winning those elections and going on, you know what I'm talking about, being first this, first that. White supremacists didn't like that, Jack. So those were some of the extras I gave you. But for these terms of people, again, we talked about cash crop, a crop that's being sold for profit. It is not a crop you just, like my mama used to keep a garden right back here in her house. My grandma used to keep a garden. Those are crops growing for individual consumption, for personal consumption. Cash crops, some of your ass growing to hustle. Okay. And cotton and tobacco were big business. Before the Civil War was big business. After the Civil War, okay. Still big business to this day. All right, the Farmers Alliance, that was networks of farmers trying to get together to work together to negotiate for better shit for themselves. You know what I'm talking about? And don't forget that I told you that by those white politicians that tried their best to keep white farmers and black farmers from clicking up. All right. And the Civil Rights Act of 1875, a law that banned discrimination in public facilities and transportation, but that was a law that was not fucking enforced. Okay. But again, I appreciate y'all for joining me. And I hope y'all enjoyed this lesson in realist history here on the realest, most entertaining show in the game. Put it on, son.